Another day, another mock draft from one of like the quote unquote best to do it, Mel Kiper Jr. We're going to talk about who he predicts to the Colts and why I like it, but I don't according to what he says. All that and more on this, the No Horsing Around podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the No Horsing Around podcast. As always, I am one of two dudes talking Colts. I'm one of your hosts, Stephen Burton, and that's really important too because special announcement for those who don't follow us on Twitter, which you can follow us on Twitter at No Horsing Around podcast, or at No Horsing, or at Stephen Burton 86, or at Colt Nation 365. Zach is back. He'll be back later this week for an episode. We're all very, very excited. But let's jump into the topic at hand, right? Mel Kiper Jr. drops another one of his mock drafts, or his first mock draft. And what do we think of it, right? What do we think of it? As far as, we talked about the previous one that Daniel Jeremiah did, former scout. His tend to be pretty decent. He had the Colts obviously taking Brock Bowers. We talked about that. Did you like it? Did you not? Could he be a future stud for the Colts? And what would that look like? Mel Kiper Jr., I feel like, just picks like a big pile of thumbtacks to the board, and each one's labeled a different team, and he just throws it at the board, and it's just like a guess sometimes, because sometimes they're just, he falls in love with certain prospects. We know how much he loved Will Levis last year. He had him, I think, at one point going number 1 overall, and he obviously went in the second round, right? So what do we think? I'm going to pull this up for you guys, because I kind of want you guys to see it, right? So let's blow this sucker up a little bit here. So, I mean, as you go through here, obviously he has the normal Caleb Williams going number 1. I don't understand. I don't absolutely love Jaden Daniels number 2. He's very small. I've been way wrong before, obviously. So, I mean, I could see that. Number 3 is Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's talk real quick. The Colts are not going to trade up to get Marvin Harrison Jr. There's just not a way that you can provide the firepower of what's needed to go from 15 to potentially 4 to get this guy, right? Like, as much as we all would love to see him in Colts blue, I don't see that happening. Chargers taking Brock Bowers. Malik Neighbors, there's your first wideout going off the board. Tennessee taking an O-lineman. Dallas Turner, Rome Odunze, there's your second wide receiver, third wide receiver going off the board, right? Nate Wiggins, keep going, Terrion Arnold, and now we're going to get to the Colts. Brian Thomas Jr., fourth wide receiver going off the board. Then you get to the Colts. He has, if you can't see it, I'm going to highlight this real quick. He has the Colts taking Keon Coleman. Okay, so here's where I'm torn, right? I like Keon Coleman. I really do. I grew up in a Florida State family. My parents are Florida State boosters. They go to all the home games. We watch a lot of Florida State games. I grew up, if you find kid pictures of me, I'm in Florida State stuff, right? So Keon Coleman was a highly, highly productive Florida State Seminole this year, right? He was very, very good. When you start breaking down like his stats, right? A lot of people question where he sits. Obviously, in this draft, he's wide receiver number 5. He came out of Michigan State. He had 798 yards and 7 touchdowns 2 years ago at Michigan State. Went to the transfer portal, was a big get, but not a lot of people knew a lot about him. Comes to Florida State and has 11 touchdowns on 658 yards and 50 receptions. So not a ton of receptions, right? But utterly dominant. I think I believe the first game of the season, he had 3 touchdowns against LSU. I mean, it was just kind of like, oh my God. He's a big time. He doesn't get a ton of separation. He's a big time physical combat receiver, combat catch receiver. Y'all have heard me say that a lot in the past when we talk about drafts, right? Do I like him? Yeah. Do I think he'd be a good fit for the Colts? Yeah. Do I like the reasoning behind what Mel Kiper says, which is right off the top, if you can't see it? He's leaning toward like-for-like replacement because he sees MPJ, Michael Pittman Jr., getting a mega deal in free agency and leaving. I just don't see that. We've talked about it. We're going to do an episode about it, obviously. I don't see Michael Pittman Jr. leaving because they can also franchise tag him. Like, I just don't see him getting out of the building. I think he has a very strong relationship with Chris Ballard. He wants to be there. Everyone, like, jokingly aside, like, he has the farm. He's put down roots. He has his kids. Like, I don't see him leaving. So that aspect of it, I don't 100% understand, right? Like, that's what I don't 100% like the reasoning behind why he's got him going to the Colts. That's one. Do I think he could be a stud for the Colts? Yes. But then there's more to this, right? Like, there's more to this mock draft, right? Um, Before we get there, really quickly, when you compare his stats coming out to Michael Pittman Jr. coming out, who was a high second round pick, Michael Pittman Jr. with 11 touchdowns, right? Like, 11 touchdowns. Say it with me again, 11 touchdowns on 1,200 yards receiving coming out of USC. So there's a difference there, right? That's part of it. Then you go to his reasoning, more of his reasoning, right? Behind why he wants why, or you look, the other reason I'm not a big fan of it is as you scroll down, JJ McCarthy. Okay. Cooper DeJean. That's a really hot name. That's a big time player at a big time position of need for the Colts at corner, right? Potentially probably shifting to safety, maybe, but a huge position of need. I would take him. Which means he's still on the board when you're taking Keon Coleman. Go down a little bit more. JC Latham, no. But then you go to 19, Jared Verse, who in a lot of people's mind including being a Florida State person, watching him, obviously his stats were down this past season because he was drawing double teams. Top D end, one of the best edge rushers in this draft, and he's on the board. I want to clarify, I like Keon Coleman. I think Keon Coleman could be an outstanding player for the Colts. But if you're sitting there at 15, according to this mock draft, and Cooper DeJean and Jared Verse are both still available to you, I don't know how you don't pick one of those two players and you take Keon Coleman, especially if you re-sign Michael Pittman Jr. I just don't see it. I want to know what you guys think. Do you like this mock draft? Do you like the idea of Keon Coleman at 15? Do you think it's too high? A lot of people have said that he's not a first-round pick. Do you think that's too high? And if the draft legitimately broke this way, would you be okay with the fact that you're passing up on a really talented corner and a really talented D end who are still sitting on the board to take a wide receiver, which, if, like I said, if you re-sign Michael Pittman Jr., is it a luxury pick at that point? It's also the fifth receiver coming off the board. Is it a luxury for you to take that? I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear it in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you think. Like I said, do you like it? Do you not like it? Who would you take instead? Do you dislike Mel Kiper too? Because I don't love him, and I don't love his mock drafts. As always, you guys, please like, share, subscribe, comment, share this video with another person. Drop it in there. And like I said earlier too, we're really excited. Zach's going to be back later this week with an episode. So I'm really excited about that. And as always, you guys, I love you. I know Zach loves you. I'm out.